Hey everybody, today is March 2nd of 2020, and in this video I'm going to be talking about the shooting that occurred last week Wednesday at the Molson Coors facility in Miller Valley here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Now, for those of you who watch my channel regularly and know that I live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, it may be a little bit of a surprise to you that I haven't done a video on this shooting yet, as once again, this happened in my hometown. And the reason for that is pretty simple. Last week, on Wednesday, I went on vacation. My brother and I went to Las Vegas with a little transfer flight in Denver. And before I talk about the numerology of this shooting, I just want to talk about a couple other things in regards to this. And this video is going to be different than a lot of my videos, whereas normally I just go through the numerology and talk about it. There is a lot of personal things that happened with this shooting that I feel like I need to talk about because for me personally, as someone who's been studying this and trying to understand what we're looking at when we look at Gematria and numerology, I'm looking for the truth, and I want to share my experiences with everybody as I go on. Now, as we know this year, Milwaukee's in the spotlight. The 2020 Democratic National Convention will be here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin at our Fiserv Forum beginning in July. This was announced last March. And it kind of crossed my mind over the last several months that in the lead up to this event, maybe we'll get some sort of false flag here in Milwaukee. Milwaukee, on a national scale, is not a city where you see in the news very often. I mean, occasionally you get some strange stories, but no big real mass shootings, not what people would call false flags. There's only about 1 million people here in the metropolitan area, so, not much happens here. And what do you know? On February 26th, we get a shooting, and of course, the Democrats are going to show up at this convention and talk about gun control, and now they have a perfect incident to have occurred right here in Milwaukee to refer to. And, with only 5 people dead, this is still the biggest mass shooting so far in 2020. So I definitely feel like there's more than meets the eye here, and that there's a little bit more to the story than what the media is reporting. That being said, there are a tremendous amount of organic synchronicities here, and it appears to me through my small investigations here in Milwaukee that the victims of this case, at least a few of them for sure, were real people who truly passed away. This is not a hoax. This does not appear to be fake. Like I said, I lived here, and yesterday there was a service for this Gennady Levshets, and there was a burial that followed in Brookfield. And then today, there was a service right near my house, about 5-10 minutes away, for this man named Jesus Vi Jr., who his name was listed first on this on the screen here, as you can see. And I didn't go in, I didn't know Jesus, but, there were hundreds and hundreds of people there. I just walked past it on the sidewalk, said hi to a couple people who were outside, but certainly there were a lot of people there, many people grieving, and as someone who has done many videos calling so many of these events hoaxes in the past, it was a little wake-up call for me. The violence is real. Whatever's truly behind it, people are losing their lives here. And, I had a little tough moment driving home. I had to pull over because, I was getting a little emotional about the whole thing. And, it just hits home. It sounds cheesy to say, and everyone on the news always says this, but when it happens close to home, it really does affect you differently. My concern, once again, is that there might be more to this story, and we'll talk about why I think that. But as far as why I did not do any work on this yet, and why it took me so long to do this, again, I was on vacation. Now, what really trips me out about this is that my flight that left Milwaukee, this is my boarding pass. It's already, done. I just covered the confirmation number in case anyone could use that to get too much info on me or something. But I want to point out the boarding time for this first outbound flight from Milwaukee was 2:07 p.m. So I probably didn't get on the plane at that time, but within a couple minutes. And this shooting here in Milwaukee happened at 2:08 p.m. on Wednesday. And certainly I've not been hoping for anything like this to happen in Milwaukee. But I've been doing blog posts and videos on numerology and the numerology of these incidents for over 3 years now. And I've always told myself that as soon as something big happens in Milwaukee, I'm going to get right there to the scene and try and, see if I can't find anything out that's not being reported or get a little closer to the truth, whatever. And not only the day that I go on vacation, this is the first time I've flown, by the way, in almost 3 years. Not only has it happened the day I leave, but it literally happened the minute after my plane boarded. And, as soon as I found out about this shooting after we landed in Denver, I think it was, it just blew my mind. I was like, what are the odds of this? For the guy who built the Gematria calculator, for this shooting to happen at home 1 minute before I leave or after I leave, it's too strange, So I just got back Saturday night. I did this post, but, I knew these services were coming up, and I just kind of had to go and sort of prove it to myself that this was all real. You know what I mean? Before I went ahead and did this video, I wanted to make sure that I did as much as I could before going live on this. And then, again, I just drove past the service for Mr. Levschetz yesterday, and again, the cemetery was full of cars. And these are cars, from Wisconsin, Illinois, regular cars, nice cars. There was nothing out of the ordinary is what I'm just trying to point out. So, it's not often something like this happens close to home, so I just wanted to take a little time and snoop around while respecting everyone's privacy to see what was going on. So, and that's not to say, I didn't look deeply into all of these people. Maybe one of these is, I don't know. Let me get into the numerology and we'll talk about this. So we talked about how this is probably related to the 2020 Democratic National Convention. And when you look at Gematria and numerology, it appears this is the case. Now, again, for anyone new to this channel, the language of Gematria is very simple. It's the concept that every name, word, or phrase has a numeric value associated with it. The most basic cipher is called English ordinal. It simply numbers the alphabet 1 through 26, A through Z. All these other ciphers are based on this method. The reduction method uses the rules of numerology. This is also called Pythagorean Gematria. So this is all a single digit. And then the reverse order simply numbers it Z through A, 1 through 26. It's also worth mentioning that there's Latin, also called Jewish Gematria, which is based in the Latin alphabetic order. And this method takes more modern English characters that weren't in Latin and puts them at the end of the cipher. This also provides much larger numbers, eliminating the chance for coincidence, or at least drastically reducing it. But we're going to use this cipher, again, as we always do in my videos. I think this is the biggest one outside of the alphabetic order. So the first thing worth noting is that the date of this shooting fell a span of 139 days before the Democratic National Convention, which begins on July 13th, a date that we will look at much more closely in a minute. 139 stands out for another reason. Now, this Molson Coors brewery is still adorned with the Miller imagery. Miller is now a subsidiary of Molson Coors. I'm not sure exactly how the structure works, but this all happened in 2016, and I want to point out the dates on which Molson Coors acquired Anheuser-Busch and took over this very brewery here under their wing. The date was October 10th, finalized on October 11th. Well, what's so interesting about those dates is that October 10th is 139 days before February 26th, and with the end date included, October 11th is also 139 days before. In the language of Gematria, Miller Coors, which was the old name of the brewery, has Gematria of 139. Now the brewery is called Molson Coors. Using the reverse alphabetic order, Molson Coors also summing to 139. Furthermore, Molson Coors Beverage Company, with the S exception, also yielding another 139. 139 is a number I talk about a lot. This is the ordinal value of Freemasonry. But perhaps more important is that this is the ordinal value of gun control. And of course, politicians came out right away talking about gun control measures, which is strange because I saw another article that said that the shooter in this case actually built his own guns, which is actually a pretty good argument against gun control, but don't take my word for that. I didn't really look deeply into that. The point is, the politicians are jumping on this. And maybe this is a completely real shooting where, there is no conspiracy. And I say that because, we live in Milwaukee here, and Milwaukee is literally the most segregated city in the nation. I've known black people who at their job have been harassed day in and day out. People moving their toolbox to the other end of the shop, locking their stuff in a locker the next day, just literally getting messed with and laughed at. Like, that's a real thing that does happen in Milwaukee. So the idea that someone got upset by this and snapped, it's within the realm of possibility. However, I can't help but wonder if there's something more to this story, like I said. And what's so interesting is that when you type out the names of these victims, just as they show up in the media, look at the ordinal value. Again, the alphabetic order, the most basic cipher. When you add the names of these victims as they appear here, you get an ordinal value of 713. The DNC, the Democratic National Convention, begins on the date 713. And the reason this date is so significant to the city is because using prime numbers, Milwaukee, Wisconsin equals 713. So what are the odds that all you have to do is type in these names and you get such a significant number to this very event? It's really strange. As far as the ordinal value of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, notice this is 225. For those of you who are into the rule of Kollel, perhaps this is significant. Remember, the shooting was on 226. The Kabbalistic rule of Kollel stating that the number 1 is not a number, so adding or subtracting 1 from any Gematria value could be significant. I don't talk about that often, but it's definitely interesting. So what I want to talk about, that's the most interesting thing about the names of these victims here, is this man right here, Jesus Vai. And again, this is the man whose service I just, went to a couple hours ago. And the man he was 33 years old. Now, it sounds wild, but if you're familiar with my work, you see how strange this is. I talk about the numerology of the crucifixion of Jesus and how it shows up in all of these deaths that we see in the mainstream media. Actors, athletes, rappers, other musicians. It seems as if the code is built around the crucifixion code and solar eclipses. Remember, during the Gospels, darkness falls over the sky during the death of the sun, just like how the eclipse represents the blockage or the death of our sun. So, I went looking at the names victims to see if anything stood out, and what do you know? A man named Jesus dying at the age of 33. He was better known as Jesse to his family and friends. Now, notice how Milwaukee, Wisconsin equals 2411 in Jewish Gematria. How strange is it that the name Jesus Vai Jr. yields 2411 as well? And then you have a 37 in reduction. This is Milwaukee in reduction. And, you dig around on Facebook, you do your research. I can't actually find an official obituary, but the service was littered all over the place and attended by hundreds of people. So it's, I'm just sharing my experience again. So that really stuck out. Of course, in the New Testament, it's believed that Jesus was crucified at the age of 33. And in Gematria, crucifixion of Jesus Christ summons to 33. But what's even more strange about this to me is that, again, this shooting happened on February 26th, written 226. It sounds strange to say, but in the alphabetic order, crucifixion of Jesus equals 226. So how weird is it that there's this riddle here? And now, if you want to take this a step further, you really could. The man who murdered Jesse was named Anthony Farrell. And I couldn't help but notice the 177 in ordinal. Remember, the man who sentenced Jesus to the crucifixion was named Pontius Pilate, which also gives us a 177. And then to top it off, 174 reverse. Milwaukee was incorporated 174 years before this shooting. The city of Milwaukee just had its anniversary at the end of January. See, down here you can see January 31st, 174 years ago. So the numerology here is quite bizarre. In regards to the 2411 that was shared between Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and the name of one of the victims, our police chief, Alfonso Morales, was also sworn in 24 months and 11 days before the shooting. And there's definitely a numeric riddle with the politicians involved here as well, and we're definitely going to be talking about that as this video goes on. The shooting was also the 177th week since the Molson Coors acquisition of Miller Coors. All right, so I'm going to try to make the most sense of this. There's a lot of different parts in this post, but I guess I want to point out the very interesting alignments with the Gematria of Milwaukee, Wisconsin first, since I feel like this is some of the most consistent stuff. Now, again, on my channel, I always talk about how these events are synced with the dates that local politicians took office. And it seems, again, like there's a very clear riddle here. Of course, we also look at their birthday. In this case, Evers is very interesting. So this man became the governor last year on January 7th of 2019. You know what? I messed up a calculation here, so we're not going to look at that. Milwaukee, Wisconsin in Gematria equals 81. And the mayor of Milwaukee is Tom Barrett. And I want to point out that he was born on December 8th. And December 8th falls a span of 81 days before the date of the shooting. The date that the Molson Coors acquisition was completed was the date leaving 81 days in the year. And last year I did a post on the date that Milwaukee was chosen. Excuse me. The date that Milwaukee was chosen to host the DNC, it was exactly 81 weeks after the most recent total solar eclipse, which was the Great American Eclipse. Now, this year, leap year is a really interesting date for Milwaukee. And I noticed that in the Gematria of the name of the shooter, Anthony Farrell, Notice how when we use capital letters, another very legit form of gematria called Francis Bacon, notice how in this method, the name Anthony Farrell sums to 229. Now, 3 days after the shooting was Leap Day, February 29th, a date that only occurs once every 4 years. Now, this may sound a little obscure at first, but hear me out. I think this is significant. This might mean something here. If we measure from the date Milwaukee was incorporated, January 31st, 1846, to leap year this year, or leap day this year, I should say, notice how Milwaukee is exactly 2,089 months old on leap day. Leap day, this always significant date having to do with time. And using Jewish gematria, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, when abbreviated, sums to 2,089. The city was exactly 2,089 months old. In another significant capital letter cipher called Frank Baconis, this is where capital and small letters are mixed together, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, sums to 261 when abbreviated. Also, when you write out Milwaukee, Wisconsin, it also sums to 261 in reverse ordinal. The state of Wisconsin was admitted to the Union on May 29th of 1848, meaning that on leap day this year, the state was 2,061 months old. So we had dual alignments with the gematria of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and the age of the city and the age of the state on the same day, leap day this year. So that's, again, this isn't the date of the shooting, but it's impossible to ignore. Now, February 26th, when the shooting occurred, had numerology of 68. Using the S exception, Molson Coors equals 68. And in reverse reduction, Miller Coors, again, this used to be the name of the brewery, also summing to 68. 68, also the gematria of the mayor of the city, Thomas Mark Barrett, summing to 68. His full name also equals 203. That's the same as brewery shooting. In reduction, brewery shooting equals 86, and this brings me to the governor of Wisconsin, Tony Evers. And something else that's worth noting here is that Tony's first name is Anthony. The name of the shooter at the brewery shooting was also Anthony. And we see this often. Not long ago, I did a decode on an event in London and talked about how it was a tribute to the mayor's numerology. And then the name of the attacker came out, and his name was Khan, just like London's mayor. And here we have the same name, Anthony, Tony Evers, Anthony Farrell, the shooter. Well, this man was born on 11/5 of 1951, which has full numerology of 86. So the governor with 86 numerology, the mayor, whose name sums to 68, the shooting on 68. And just the name Tony Evers has a lot of interesting alignments as well. Notice how Tony Evers equals 46. He's the 46th governor of Wisconsin. In reduction, his name equals 44, which is the reduction value of Wisconsin. Now, this shooting was in Milwaukee, and notice how Tony Evers equals 100 and 143. That's the same as Milwaukee, 100, 143. Now, if you think that's weird, wait till we get to this part. So, notice his birthday. Tony Evers, our governor. And by the way, ever since this guy started running, I always said there was something creepy about him. I don't like the look of his eyes. I don't know. I gotta back out of this picture. It's weird. So, anyways, he was on 11. He was born on 11/5 of 51, 11551. Notice how the word killing sums to 115 in both the reverse order and Jewish gematria. This shooting fell 11 months and 5 days before Milwaukee's anniversary. It was also 11 months and 15 days after Milwaukee was announced as the host of the Democratic National Convention. Mayor Tom Barrett took office in April of 2004, meaning he's been in office for 15 years, 10 months, 11 days. The man who committed the shooting, Anthony Farrell, his birthday was listed as January 22nd of 69. This means that when he died, he was 51 years, 1 month, and 5 days old. As far as him being 51, mass shooting equals 51. Milwaukee, Wisconsin, when abbreviated, equals 51. Milwaukee was even incorporated on a date with a life lesson number of 51. This guy's full name even equals 251 in the alphabetic order. If you measure from his birthday to the date of the shooting, we find he was 24,951 days old. I've never seen more 115-511 coding around the politicians. This is crazy. So, two of these victims, Trevor and Jesse, were both 33 years old. This shooting was 3 months and 3 days before Wisconsin's anniversary. This is also 93 days. And notice how the word Miller equals 33 and 93. You know, again, it's a Molson Coors plant, but if you're from Milwaukee like me, you know that this city is synonymous with Miller. So there's more that I didn't mention that's in this post. I think I covered most of it. I guess the only thing I missed is that our governor, Tony Evers, is 68 years old to line up with the numerology of the shooting and the gematria of the mayor. Also, in regards to Tony Evers summing to 44, our mayor, Tom Barrett, is the 44th mayor of Wisconsin. He's been the mayor a long time, 15 years. He was born in 53 even, which I just realized is the gematria of Milwaukee. Wow, and then Tom Barrett even equals 138. And this shooting was 138 days before the DNC. So, I feel like this was a strange video compared to what I normally do. You know, I normally just kind of crunch the numbers and everything, but just wanted to share what I found about this story, and it's crazy, you know. I mean, we see these numeric alignments, and, you know, we always say that it's evidence of some sort of conspiracy, and I still believe that's got to be the case to some extent, but how are these things being carried out? It's all just too strange, you know? And, yeah, I don't know what else to say. There's definitely something going on, you know, tugging at our heartstrings. And again, like I said, Miller has always been synonymous with Milwaukee, so if somehow this was some sort of false flag shooting where we're being lied to about who carried it out and what really happened, then this is the exact code that they would do it by. again, I don't have too much more to add. So I guess I'm just now checking in on the chat, and I'm gonna go through the chat and start addressing some of the things mentioned, because I made a lot of claims on this thing, and I can see why people would watch my videos, and I don't know. All right. So again, in my observation, so again, there was no obituary for Jesus Vi Jr. that I found. Again, that was the guy whose service I just walked by. Hundreds of people there. And there are other obituaries from victims of this shooting. You can find some of them, but I could not find one on Jesus Vi. If you dig around Facebook, I did not find a page for Jesus, but there were images of him with his family, like his father, his sister. I'm not going to show that for respect for them, but if you really want to dig around, that's possible. It's there. So again, I mean, I see everyone, a lot of people in my chat saying hoax, hoax, drill, drill. It's, guys, I don't think it's that simple, and again, the only reason you guys are saying that is because people like me have been telling you that all along. So, Aaron, did they fake a funeral in Australia? I mean, certainly they could have. And there's people saying like they faked the Kobe funeral. Well, what do you mean they faked the funeral? Well, they gathered a shit ton of people for it. So it's not like it was a fake funeral. Maybe it was a fake death. Someone mentioned in the chat that I took a picture at 3:22 p.m. He must be talking about this. This just happens to be the time that my brother sent me this picture, okay? So again, you guys in the chat, you'll look for anything, It's insane. And again, you guys are going to be looking for numbers and seeing these things and thinking your own things forever. Someone else mentioned they went to high school with the parents of one of the students who was killed at a high school shooting 5 years ago. Again, I feel pretty confident that a lot of these shootings, or at least some of them, are indeed real. And of course, the media is going to jump on one if one really happens and spin it to their agenda, which is what they do. Another comment saying, even if it was a real shooting, it still could have been a staged event. To me, that seems the most likely at this point. But, again, I don't know. Amy pointing out that his last name is probably Valle, which I think is right now that I think of it. Sorry, just still browsing through the chat here. Oh, by the way, Braden, for mentioning the 322, I don't know if you guys notice, but a lot of the times when I do a video and there's like a CNN video, I will pause it at 33 seconds just to see if anybody notices, just to see if anybody's looking. I always want, waiting for somebody to point this out. Hey, why did you do 33? So, but the 322, that's just, like I said, when my brother texted me. So, but the boarding time's not that interesting. 2:07. The door closes at 2:37. It's not like this whole thing is coded. You just found a number and you're like, oh, it's bizarre. Chuck P, there is obituaries for these. Again, here's one, for instance. This was the service I drove past yesterday. There were a lot of people at the cemetery. I think I even took a couple pictures. I'd have to dig them up here. And this isn't going to prove anything to you guys, I know, but this was at Mount Zion over in Brookfield. And again, there were cars. I mean, this whole thing was packed. Cars from Wisconsin, cars from Illinois. But again, I didn't go in. Not that I would have learned anything anyway, because if it's a fake service, then it's just going to be a service I'm not going to be able to tell, right? And it's probably not going to be open casket. You have gunshot victims. So, I just kind of had to show myself that this was all happening. And anyway, I just took one other of cars down this side road. It was packed there too. Simple Truth mentioning also, of course, the Bucks are red hot this year. And as we mentioned, Milwaukee equals 100, just like our governor, Tony Evers, 100. And this shooting was 100 days before the start of the NBA Finals, with the end date included. Of course, this finals starting on my birthday this year. So it's possible that, sports could be mixed into this. I'm a little skeptical when it comes to the sports, the proactive sports decoding, because I don't really think anyone's figured that out yet. But that could definitely be significant. Okay. Okay, and Aaron just clarifying here that they ran a funeral for a PSYOP in Australia last year. You had said that he was alive in America. Sure, and I know they do fake funerals. One that sticks out to me the most is when, remember, there was some congressman who died in the South Carolina church shooting, and it appeared as if they used a wax figure at the funeral. They did alignments with his eyes and his ears, and you could see that there was something going on there. It wasn't right. So I understand they do that, and maybe that's what I came across. I don't know, but nothing proved either way to me. And Chuck, you were mentioning how there were no obituaries. Well, now you're saying that the obituaries could be fake. Well, what is it then? I mean, if you're looking for proof, or if you're looking to doubt it, you'll always find a reason to doubt it. My thing is that if it's so easy to fake an obituary, and maybe it is, why don't they have obituaries for anybody? Why do some have them? Why do some not? Maybe not all families are concerned about getting the names in the paper. I don't know. So, do I feel any closer to the truth after all this? Maybe a little bit. But again, I mean, what would the theory be? That all these guys got up and left, moved somewhere else? Why would they leave their families behind? But again, I don't know. I just wanted to share the numerology. Mainly, we had the clear alignments to the Democratic National Convention, the fact that the names of the 5 victims sums to 713, which is the date of the convention, And then we had our Jesus riddle, like we always do in these mainstream stories. The 33-year-old Jesus dying in the shooting. It's incredible stuff. I guess another thing that might be worth mentioning too is that if you add up the ages of the people who died, at least the victims, notice how this sums to 244. Well, not only does kill equal 44 in the alphabetic order, here you see kill, but in Hebrew Gematria, the language where this appears to have originated, the word for kill equals 244. And that was the sum of the ages. Oh, and you know what else, too, is that if you take all these names... how do I do this again? Okay, so here's the names, 713, like the date of the Democratic National Convention. Well, then if you add the name of the shooter who also died, you get a lot more interesting numbers here. First of all, 314, the first three digits of pi in reduction. The 1108 sticks out in reverse. Wisconsin equals 118 in reverse. The words death and homicide equal 118 in Jewish Gematria. And then in the alphabetic order, you have 890 when you add up the 6 names. The word kill in English Gematria equals 89. So this event couldn't be more coded. And I guess one of the theories I was thinking of, and again, I don't know what's happening, but, is it possible that some of these guys were really killed and then maybe there's like one filler name in here, just to make the Gematria line up right? And if I'm wrong, well, you can't blame me because we live in a world truly run by Satan where deception is the name of the game. And we are all just left to figure out what's happened. We have to take all of these news sources that we get and try and figure it out. So if we're wrong, you can't really blame us. But it's all mind games. In regards to the people being real, I mean, they interviewed family and friends on the news who were very shaken up by this whole thing. So, yeah, I mean, the people are real. I don't see any evidence that they're not. And I like what Aaron says because, for some reason, when I was a kid, I actually really enjoyed the movie Truman Show, right? And I don't really know why. I kind of always had this idea or fantasy or something when I was a kid that my life was actually like a TV show, right? And that there was someone following me around. And so when I saw that movie, for some reason, it struck a chord, and I actually saved my movie ticket. I still have my Truman Show movie ticket to this very day, somewhere in my closet. And to this day, I can't tell you why that film resonated with me so much, but when you look at this kind of stuff, the fact that all these numbers line up so perfectly, it does feel like we live in some sort of simulated reality. I mean, I don't know. I think the idea of like NPCs, right? A lot of people talk about this, how maybe a lot of the people in this world are not people like you and I. And no film explores this idea better. Maybe others do. But the film They Live is extraordinary in its ability to capture this idea, which is that sorry, I got distracted by a comment here. Hang on a sec. I'll get back to this. But I definitely believe that we live in a realm that's some sort of spiritual test. And is it possible that people are programs or whatever that are helping carrying out these tests for the souls that really do inhabit the world? And I've always kind of been against this idea of NPCs, of people that aren't real, because I think it's kind of dangerous. Because if you go out telling people, convincing people that a lot of people aren't real, then maybe someone's going to act on that. You know what I mean? And this is going to go over not very well with a lot of you, but you can make videos telling people the earth is flat and people will believe it. Just look at the internet. Just look at the comments on my last video. Instead of people contributing numerology or giving support, they're quick to insult me for not thinking the earth is flat. So if I was to start telling people that, some people aren't real, then that could end in very bad consequences for those people. Like, who knows what people will act on and do if they think that there's like aliens or robots, you know what I mean? So I don't like talking about that, but the theory has to be explored, man. You're right. I mean, you don't see anybody ever come out and mention false flags like in the proper way. I mean, you hear false flag once in a great while, but I don't know. Chuck, you mentioned someone's wife was married to a woman. Whose was that? Is that the Jesus Valle? Oh, Mr. Farrell? So the shooter, his wife was married to a woman, you said? I'd like to see where you got that out, or where you got that from. I'm pretty curious. And an interesting comment from Traverse the Universe, and this is how I feel, man. I mean, I'll be honest, right? Like, I'll turn the camera back on me again, because I got into numerology and Gematria several years ago, right? Late 2015 throughout 2016 is where I started to really realize that something was going on. And ever since then, it's been 4 years since then, and I don't really feel a whole lot closer to the truth. The only thing I know for sure is that I've gotten hundreds, if not thousands, of examples in my own personal life showing me that numerology can be organic. And my gripe with a lot of the community is that they see numerology in an event and they assume that that must mean there's a conspiracy, or that something is rigged, or that it's fixed that way. But I assure you that's not the case. Numerology is how things manifest in reality. That's a core construct of this world. And I have no doubt about this. So just because numbers line up doesn't mean there's more to it. Maybe people just took part in an activity and the numerology manifested through gematria and dates, and I believe 100% that happens. On the other hand, I also think that people know about it and then pay tribute to it by setting up their own events, so to speak, by the numbers. So this comment kind of, it resonates with me. Like, this web is so difficult to untangle, and it just feels like we'll never know the exact truth. And maybe we're not meant to. Maybe that's part of our DNA, is that we're limited in our ability to discover what the truth is. We can see examples of this code that operates within our universe. We can recognize patterns that it evokes, but that doesn't mean we can figure out how it's coded in the first place. In my experience with predictions, for instance, it feels like I could never be more wrong. My vacation this past week was to Las Vegas. And while I was out there, I planned on spending some money just to gamble and have a little fun. I figured I'd lose some money, that's fine. But while I was out there, I thought it'd be foolish for me not to try to use numerology to bet on sports. And it went pretty awful, okay? Like, I didn't win any of the bets, and I only tried a couple parlays. Actually, one parlay I got really close on. I almost won $1,100, and then the Sacramento Kings blew a 19-point third quarter lead, and I lost. Now, if I was a smart bettor, if I knew what I was doing, I would have bet on the other team to come back. I think it was the Thunder. I would have bet on them to come back when they were plus 800 in the fourth quarter or whatever to kind of like secure my bet, but I don't know what I'm doing, so whatever. But I want to point out one of the riddles I found that actually lost, and I couldn't believe it. I really couldn't. It was a game between, let's see, who was it? It was the Clippers and Suns. Is that right? Yeah, I think so. Because Mike Malone was the coach of the Suns. No, he was the coach of the Nuggets. This was it. February 28th. Okay, I get it. All right, so this was the riddle I found that I thought was a complete lock. I said, I'll never bet on sports again if this is wrong, right? So the first thing I did was typed out the date, February 28th, and we see 260 in the alphabetic order. So what I did is I looked up the coaches of these two teams, right? The coach of the Nuggets is Mike Malone. His name equals 260, and he was going for his 260th career win, okay? Meanwhile, the coach of the Clippers is Doc Rivers. And Doc Rivers equals 761 in the same cipher. And if he lost, it would have been his 761st career loss. And for both of those coaches, that was their total, including the playoffs. And I thought, holy crap, this is such a clear riddle. It couldn't be more obvious. So I was like, this is a lock, and I put that in as the last game for my parlay. And then they ended up losing by 29 points. So, to me, the sports betting stuff, I mean, you can pick up on riddles for championships. I've always said this. You can pick up on riddles for championships, for huge national games, particularly like the NFL, Thursday night or Sunday night football. I think those games quite often are rigged, and you see evidence of it all the time. But I'm not sold that every game in sports is rigged. And I know that people in the chat will swear on their life that it is, but I'm not sold on that. And, again, I believe that numerology is going to manifest in some fashion anyway, regardless of what happens. So, people will think what they think on that. But all I'm saying is that when it comes to these rink-a-dink average everyday games, yeah, you may have people with winning records, but that's probably not against the spread. Remember, a lot of these teams are favorites when they go into a game. So just because someone has a winning record, it doesn't mean that they're that great. So anyway, Carter with an interesting comment. Remember, I shared some experiences when I went out with Anarchadelphia, and I started kind of decoding people's names and pointing out their numerology. And I think one of the first guys who asked that weekend, he said that the number 47 was always his favorite number. It was always significant to him. And I asked him his name, and he's like, oh, my name's John, John. I was like, look at this. People have been calling you the number 47 your whole life, You don't even know it. So on a subconscious level, I think Gematria is operating there as well. And just catching up on chat here. We have agreements. We are in a simulation, guys. We are in the Matrix. I believe we are in some sort of construct, a realm, some sort of soul recycling system. Yeah, Chuck is mentioning that the Waukesha sheriff was at the scene, and that's pretty interesting. Why would Waukesha be there? You'd think they'd have enough resources in Milwaukee County to cover the shooting with one perpetrator. So there could be something about that being a drill, So I guess I'll do some more digging into the shooter, Anthony Farrell. Again, someone's saying that his wife was married to a woman. It's pretty strange. And then there's some agreement here too that maybe not every game is rigged or scripted, and maybe not even all the sports are scripted. I don't know. I feel like we should be able to prove. So, in order for sports to be as scripted as a lot of people claim, there has to be technology in play. So we've seen it all the time where a ball will bounce on the rim a few times and then go in with the exact certain amount of time on the clock. If that's technology, then it's pretty damn good technology. Now, also, if they're using technology to guide a ball in a hoop or move a football from the goalposts, then we should be able to prove it. Now, I think the best evidence is in football, where you see a kick go right up the middle and then suddenly it'll just get pushed to the side. And I'm no expert, but sometimes that looks rather unnatural. I just think that there should have been some studies by now showing that a basketball, went into the hoop at a much faster speed than it was released from, or something to that effect, right? Like, that should be provable. So I would hope that one day people could do that research and try and get a better idea of how things are rigged if they are. Yeah, and I mean, I'm kind of tired of people saying they don't find organic numerology. Like, you guys probably don't know what to look for. You guys aren't looking deep enough. The organic numerology in my life is out of control completely. Now, granted, my name equals Gematria, right? 142, just like Gematria 142. The purchase of my house was the best example I can ever think of, right? Like, my name equals 130, which is the same as my dad's. That's the only number we share in Gematria for our full names. And even though my house went on sale for like $127,000 or something, maybe it was a little more, my agent recommended I go in for exactly 130 because someone else had already put an offer. And I was like, okay, cool, I like that number. So I ended up buying my house for exactly $130,000. My 4-digit address is the same year my dad was born, right? My dad did not own a house until April of 2002. We moved back to Cudahy from Heartland. Well, I moved into this house, or I actually officially began owning this house exactly 182 months after my dad bought his first house. And look at my name in Gematria, 182. And then as far as my reverse name, 337, I was sitting in cubicle A3037 when I first built the Gematria calculator. I mean, I didn't build it at work, but that was my cubicle. My first property tax bill was $3,307. If you go from my birthday to the youngest of my 3 older brothers, look how many days apart we were born, 3,307. When we played Tiddlywinks this year, my brother and I both scored 337 points on the first day. So, organic numerology is real. It's all over the place. You just got to know what to look for. So, I don't know. I'm not going to entertain that anymore, though. And I'm not able to tell anybody what their name means. I don't believe that you can learn what your name means through the numbers. Remember, the word numbers has the same gematria as duality, and perhaps that's a coincidence, but I don't think there's a better example showing you that numbers have duality. Just because you see a certain number doesn't mean it's good, doesn't mean it's bad. It's just representative of a certain wavelength that perhaps you're more in tune to than other people who don't have that number. So what I tell people is just type in your name and learn the numbers, and then pay attention to what happens around you in life, and you'll see these things manifest. And a lot of it has to do with attention and focus, and I think that has a lot to do with why this stuff works in the first place. Oh, by the way, and it's not just that my name matches gematria. My first name equals numbers, 43, 29, 92, and then 97 is the 25th prime, like Derek. My last name equals 99 and 90, which is the same as letters. 9990. And most of my work is focused on the moon. 9990. I grew up a fan of the Brewers. 9990, right? And again, maybe these are stronger for me because I just happen to be the person who, built the calculator and helped bring this to light. Of course, I'm not the person who brought it to light first, but I think through the calculator is when we truly saw an explosion in the spread of this information. Someone named Turd Skank on here. Thanks for deleting that, Amy. So yeah, I've been going on for over an hour now, which wasn't necessarily the intent, but again, if these were fake funerals that I really passed by over the past couple days, then dang, that actually bothers me because I was kind of affected by one of them, you know what I mean? And the last thing I'm going to think from these deaths, and the last thing that you should think is that, oh, people are dying from guns, we need to get rid of guns. Well, that's definitely not the answer. Gun control seems to be the agenda here, particularly from the Democratic side, who's invading Milwaukee in July. I can't wait till that. That'll be great. And remember, the Second Amendment is there for a reason. It's not for hunting. It's not for recreation. It's to protect us against the government, okay? And for anybody who's for gun control, ask them. First ask them, do you trust the government? And you'll barely find a soul who's like, oh, yeah, I trust the government. So then why would you trust the government to decide who gets guns? You know what I mean? So, we have things in place to prevent a tyrannical government. And, a lot of people make the argument, well, they ban guns in other countries, and it's not that bad there. The government hasn't taken over. Well, of course not. Why would they do that while there's still all these guns in America, They got to wipe as many as they can first before they try some sort of hostile takeover. But that's why we're not seeing that. We're seeing more of a slow boil, little by little, piece by piece. We're probably not going to see a major thing like 9/11 ever again, at least not for a long, long time, because the media is locked down, and now you see with the internet, the way my channel's been censored, along with many others, this information is very well suppressed. We're still in our tiny little corner of the internet. It looked good for a little while, some of my videos going viral and whatnot, but they put the kibosh on that real quick. So now, it's only word of mouth, people seeing links, and I think with numerology in general, I think a pretty small percentage of people have a strong interest in it or have the ability to understand what we're looking at and make these connections themselves. So I think, we're just always going to be in this minority, so to speak. And it's unfortunate, but, we have a lot of people who understand what's happening too. I do feel like I broke the matrix sometimes, it wasn't like a week or two after the calculator went online that I started hearing them talk about numerology on ESPN. They said they were showing some hockey highlights and they're like, oh, number 11 passes to number 21 and he scores on number 3. It's like, I don't know what that means, but there you have it. And I'm like, I've never seen or heard anything like that on ESPN before, but it would just happened to be after Zach and I started to get really big on YouTube. It was really strange. And now you see it to the extreme this year. During the college championship, the announcers gave the viewers a numerology lesson while sneaking the number they were talking about into the background. And I don't know. A lot of people would say that they're mocking us with this. But me personally, I hear people talking about numerology, and I'm just happy that people are talking about it because ultimately, when you look at numerology and you look at your own life and realize how many things line up and how bizarre some of that stuff is, it kind of shows you that there's another layer to reality. And I think that layer is what a lot of people need to come around and be good people. Because what it kind of shows you is that we're all connected on some quantum level. And if that's the case, then, no action, no thought does not have a consequence. It's a hard concept for me to explain since I'm no expert, but these alignments aren't possible unless we're part of something greater. And understanding that we're part of something greater is often the first step to spiritual peace and enlightenment. And I believe that numerology is a great way to show people that there's part of something greater. I think, that's still my ultimate goal. I mean, exposing the evil behind this numerology is great, but sometimes I think just the fact that evil exists, like sometimes that manifests by numbers as well. As far as our 26-letter alphabet, I think, what our 26-letter alphabet gives us in numerology is symmetry. I mean, this is unique from other alphabets, is that, like if we take out the reduction ciphers so you can see easier, no matter what, like, so Milwaukee reduces to 1 in ordinal. We know it's going to reduce to 8 in reverse. Brewers reduces to 9, so we know it's going to reduce to 9 in reverse, because these two numbers will always add up to a multiple of 9. Milwaukee, Wisconsin gives... that's another 9. What am I doing? So the word guns, 7, we know it's going to reduce to 2 in reverse, and it does. 11, of course, 1 plus 1 is 2. So I don't know if this is why we have a 26-letter alphabet. 26 is a significant number for many reasons, but I think the reason reverse gematria is so significant in English and may not have been so big in something like Jewish gematria is because we have that symmetry in English. I like this comment from Carter, too. Like, the calculator seems like a manual override to look into our subconscious and conscious sphere of influence. Very interesting comment. When I first built this calculator, I had no idea about the organic matrix, basically. Like, I did not know about manifestation naturally through numerology. I had no clue that happened. And within a couple months, I began wondering if I created a digital Ouija board. Almost. It's like, yeah, language is numbers. It's impossible to separate the two. And I think that's very evident in Hebrew and the Torah. If you really study, you realize that it's almost divinely written. And it has to be that way because it's the only way that works. So at the core, our brains really might only understand numbers, and those letters that we see in the alphabet are really just kind of programming our subconscious to those numbers. And that's definitely what I believe we're looking at through this, I went my whole life with no direction, guys. Like, I did not finish high school, which surprises a lot of people because I can program so well, but I was always a smart dude. I was just bored as hell with school. By like 3rd grade, I decided I didn't give a crap. So I didn't graduate high school. I ended up getting a temp job. Never went to college. I worked my way up through a warehouse, completely redesigned a supply chain, and now I work for GE Healthcare. I'm one of the first proponents to tell people you don't need to go to school. Like, it can certainly help, but I see school as kind of a scam. They try to put you in hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt so you can do what you want to do when, if you put your mind to it, you can really do anything without school. Maybe you can't be a doctor without going to school, but, there's exceptions to it. So, anyway, like I said, I was directionless for my whole life, and then I found Gematria, and I just, and I knew enough programming that I could build a calculator, and once I got into this, I was, like, obsessed. And I've always had obsessions growing up. I had obsessive-compulsive disorder really bad when I was young. Could have definitely had a documentary on me. But usually my obsessions last like a year and a half, and then I get bored and move on. But Gematria is just as much of an obsession as any, and it's almost too much sometimes. Sometimes it kind of gets in your way of life. And when I talk about the calculator being like some sort of digital Ouija board, right? What this speaks to is that you're sort of seeing things on a higher plane, right? And the reason I'm not so adamant about teaching numerology to anybody, to random people on the street, is because I see the negatives in learning about numerology as well. And let me explain that, right? So when I started realizing I could decode my own life and look at things by the numbers, what it did is it kind of sucked me out of my own mind in the sense that I was no longer just having the human experience I would have with other people. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking, this person was sent to me for a reason, and there's a riddle behind it, and I'm supposed to learn something from this, instead of just being emotionally invested in the present. And numerology has hurt my ability to connect with people at a core level, which is, a bizarre admission to make, may surprise people, but it's not all fun and games, I mean, you see the hand of the creator, so to speak, and when it's evident that that's operating in your life, it's hard to focus on what's going on around you and being in the present. And it's detracted from parts of my life, I'll say that much. So when I talk about numerology, I'm actually really, really hesitant to talk about it with people, with new people. Sometimes I get a good sense, judging by someone's eyes or their demeanor, whether or not they would be receptive to it. I usually limit myself to that. But I can't bring myself to just talk to anybody about it, because why do I think anybody's going to understand it, And I'm glad that people are out there doing that. Certainly, Zach, for instance, taking a trip down to LSU, like, I commend him for that. But I just don't think you're going to see me in those situations. I mean, something happened right here in Milwaukee, and I could have gone to these funerals and, just held up some signs with numerology and stuff, but what's it going to do, It's not going to start a revolution. It's not going to wake up the entirety of mankind. I'm just not that excited about sharing that information with people, especially with people who are grieving or appear to be grieving anyway. So, man, we're going on for a while here. I just kind of... I don't ever really chat with you guys, so it's good to take some time once in a while and do this. License plates are coded, I believe, yes. Let me tell you a funny story I had about my license plate, right? Now, I'm not going to give you my license plate, but I will tell you this much. If you take the 3 digits in my license plate, the 3-digit number, and add them to the ordinal value of the 3 numbers in my license plate, so here in Wisconsin, 3 letters, 3 numbers, you get the number 725, okay? And I swear, like a month or two after I got my car, I was driving to work, and I just started saying the number 725 really loud. Now, I kind of like that number, 725. It's really fun to say out loud for some reason. But I always kind of told people, like, that was my favorite number, 725. And then I ended up getting a license plate that sums to 725. So, Aaron brings up, people's car plates being coded. I think that's true. And yeah, I think the right way to handle numerology is to just have an understanding that it's happening, but I don't condone anyone like doing things by the numbers in their own personal life. Because I think if you find that you just follow your passions and what guides you, that it's already happening by the numbers. And there's some small exceptions. For instance, I uploaded my documentary on 2/27 on the date 2/27 at 2:27 a.m., but that's a little different. Okay. I got an interesting comment from someone new, Daily Truth Show. Mentioning how many subscribers I have. So I had 7,000 subscribers when my first channel was deleted in February of 2018. This is my second YouTube channel. And look, I mean, the reason this stuff is big is because it's extremely interesting. However, it's only really extremely interesting to kind of like a small percentage of the population. Me personally, I think I have the best numerology decodes on YouTube. Anytime there's a big event in the news, you're usually going to find all the numerology here. And I go really deep, and a lot of people, they want to stick to the basics of numerology, just look at the date and basic gematria, but there's more to it. The eclipse code, the eclipse crucifixion code, these things are absolutely in play, and I look at them all the time. And when I first came across gematria and numerology, I thought it was ridiculous. I thought this is way too basic, it's way too simple. There's no way this could be legit. And it really took me a couple months of paying attention and then finally building my own calculator where I realized, okay, there's something going on. However, what exactly is going on is not entirely certain. But yeah, I mean, I feel blessed to still have this channel. I've certainly changed my tone since the last one, even though I didn't do anything wrong to warrant a deletion. I stopped making fun of certain groups of people a little bit. Even though they kind of deserved it, it still wasn't completely right. So I've toned back. And really, what this really comes down to is that YouTube has changed their algorithms. So if you go to my channel, do a search on my channel for the numerology of XXX Tentacion. And I'll just bring this up, actually, for you guys. So we're going to look at my videos, and we're going to do a search. Now, this is how messed up YouTube is. YouTube has completely taken a dive for truth or content, and this is a perfect example. The day that rapper XXX Tentacion died, I did a video explaining the eclipse sacrifice numerology. Very clear as day what's going on with his death. Look at how many views this video has. I swear this is less than it was even, but it's almost 300,000 views, okay? My channel was getting pretty big. My videos were going viral. This was absolutely the case. I mean, look how many comments are here. A lot of these comments are calling me crazy, but that's fine. 2,700 comments. And these are not subscribers. These are, and look at this. I mean, these people don't understand what's going on. I'm using multiple algorithms, plugging in random data, none of which is true. And this has 277 likes. So my content was being seen by everybody, even people who didn't get it. This guy calling me a meth head, for instance, even though this exact same riddle that I uncovered here happens again and again and again and again. Anyway, but then recently I did a video on Juice WRLD. And this is a similar rapper. He might not have been quite as big as XXX Tentacion, but he was another #1 Billboard artist who had only been around for a couple of years. And look at how many views I have on this video. Barely 3,000. So my views have dropped nearly 100 times in the last year and a half. And that's a result of the YouTube algorithms. And just ask yourself, if it's really so crazy, if what I'm sharing is really the musings of a meth head, of course I've never done meth, I don't condone drugs like that, why would YouTube take measures to suppress this information when so many people think it's very interesting? And it's clear, it's because this is a code that's legit. Why would they censor my content? I'm not calling for violence. I'm not calling for the death of anybody. I'm just pointing things out, yet I'm not allowed to do that anymore. So, it would have been cool. I was on my way to, I could have quit my job and put ads on my station and been rolling in dough. But people who shared the type of knowledge I am are not going to be supported by the system, ever. Oh, I really should wrap this up. Yeah, I know I don't need to explain that, but sometimes I get frustrated. BlockTube, yep. I've tried a lot of other sites. It's just they never get any views, because nobody uses anything else. So, all right, guys. Thanks to everybody who jumped in and kept me going here in the chat. It was nice to mix things up and do a long video where I address what's being said in the chat. Yeah. for something to happen like this in Milwaukee, it sucks. And, people are talking about it, and I always got to bite my tongue because I want to tell them there's something more to what's happening. And there definitely is, but what exactly it is, I don't know. But people just need to see how it's aligned with the DNC and understand, we're being messed with. All right, guys. Thanks once more. It's been a pleasure. Peace, love, and God bless everyone. See you next time. Adios.